Let me take you back to a moment in time, a moment when I was not born, because I was born in 98, but this is 92, so there's that. In the Summer Olympics, when British sprinter Derek Redmond was lining up to race in the semifinals for the 400 meter. He laces up his spikes and he gets on the track, and right, everyone's like lined up ready to go. And it's on your mark, get set, go. 50 meters, bow. 100 meters, flying. 150 meters, we're doing good. And that 200 meters, does anybody know this story? Was anybody there watching it live? You're like, that's not shade, I'm just asking. That's a fair question in this room, okay? I'm 28. 200 meters, he pulls and tears his hamstring and collapses on the track. And in a moment, what seemed like the race is over, he gets up and he starts hobbling his way to the finish line, and then we see the camera kind of go wide, and we see this guy running on the track, pushing away security, and we see that it's his dad picking him up on the track, shoulder in hand, whispering, "You don't have to do this." And in an interview, when they interviewed Derek, he says, "Yes, I do." And they limp to the finish line together. This is what I think about when I think about what it looks like for us to embody this idea of living out a gospel community that encourages one another in the gospel. I'm not sure whatever it is that you've come into this room with today, maybe you feel like you're just like Derek, where you're like, man, I was running and I was going at a great pace, and then something just happened. I just hit a wall, and all of a sudden I find myself collapsing, and I'm just in need of some encouragement to keep running. Today, I want to really just spend some time thinking through this idea. We're going to spend some time in Scripture today on how does it actually look like for us to live into this idea of running the race that God has for us with endurance. And so I want to be in Hebrews. If you've got a Bible, you can go ahead and turn to it or flip to it. If you've got a notebook, like you should, or your notes, you know what they say, 90% of people who take notes in church go to heaven. That's in the Bible somewhere. It's true. It's true. I want to just take a moment to just really kind of acknowledge the reality that there are areas in all of our lives where we might be feeling some discouragement. Moments where MCs don't go at the way we thought that they would. Maybe you're coming into this room and you're like, man, I really thought that my MC was going to be like this, and it's really looking like this. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's your parenting. Maybe it's the kids you're hanging around at school. Whatever that looks like for you today, I want to encourage you with some good news that's in the story that we find ourselves in today. We're going to be in Hebrews. And if you know anything about the book of Hebrews, the author is writing to an audience that's undergoing some severe persecution. And so there's a ton of themes that we're going to see in here today, but here's the text we're going to find ourselves in. For some of you, it might be familiar. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to give you some encouragements from it. Hebrews 12, 1 through 4 is where we're going to be. It says, "Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith, because the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and now he is seated in the place of honor besides God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people, then you won't become weary and give up. After all, you have not given your lives in your struggle against sin." From this passage, I want to give you two quick things for the sake of time. I want to give you them right off the bat. If I want to encourage you from this text, there's two things I want to encourage you with. It's the idea of remember and run. Remember and run. So what's the first thing that I want you to remember from this passage? Number one is I want you to remember that your life is a part of a much bigger story. I remember when I was in youth ministry and I was like starting to get into it, and I was preaching on this text, and I don't even remember what it was, but I'm sure it was nothing like what I'm about to say now. And it's like, remember, you're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses and all your friends and all whatever it was. And I just remember after that message, teaching to a bunch of middle schoolers and high schoolers, one of my mentors pulling me to the side kind of the next day and was like, hey, Mike, it's clear that you're gifted. And it's clear that you have a passion for teaching. What's not clear is if you've read Hebrews 11. Because when you read Hebrews 11, right, the author starts to get us through this thing called the Hall of Faith, right? And if you've read it, it's like it's by faith, and it's like all of these legends in the Old Testament, right? It's by faith that Moses, and it's by faith that David, and it's by faith that, and all these people he starts listing them off, and he says, and it's important that we remember that. Because when you start to see in the first word of the passage we started reading, that word therefore, it's important to ask ourselves the question, what's that therefore? Just like a quick little way for us as you're studying the Bible to think through that, right? When you see that therefore, what's that therefore? And then you go back to the last thing and you start to get an idea of what it looks like in light of the bigger picture. And so he's giving us the Hall of Faith, and then he shares this moment in verses 11 and starting in 32. I love this. He's just going off on all these different things in light of this crowd of witnesses. He's starting in verse 32. He says, how much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the other prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God has for them. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the flames of fire and escaped by death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle, put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back from their dead. Listen, when I hear that, I go, sign me up, right? Like, this is the thing. When I think about my MC, I'm like, who doesn't want that? You give me any one of them. Shut the mouths of lions? Yep. Like put foreign armies to flight? Sounds great. Right? Women receive back their dead. You can't kill us because of resurrection. Like, who doesn't want that story? But unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, the text keeps going. But others were tortured. Whoa. Refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prisons. Some died by stoning. Some were sawed in half, and others were killed with the sword. Aren't you glad you showed up to the gathering this morning to be encouraged? Some went about wearing skins of sheep and goats, destitute and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world, wandering over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. And so I want us to really just get this idea that when the author writes that you are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, it's like we are a part of a much bigger story. When you think about a great cloud of witnesses, it's basically like when you study it, or maybe your translation says it's just a great throng of people. Okay, I don't know what a throng is, but it's great. So there's that. And so the author is saying, amen, in light of all of these people who have gone before you, you are a part of something bigger than just this moment. That you're a part of something so much bigger. It's almost as if we've had 6 symbols to explain the story. It's like, what would we do, right? I want to encourage you that as we take up our role in the story of God, we have to remember that we were not the last Christians that are going to have to face endurance, because we weren't the first. That there are people who have gone before us, and in great faith, they did so many great things. And they're watching us going, let's go, let's run the race. I want to encourage you to remember that your life is a part of a much bigger story. One of the ways that I find myself encouraged in this passage is because when you think about you could take any one of those stories, right? And just read it and know it. I think one of the things that I'm always encouraged by in this moment is just how serious the reminder is that I am not in charge of outcomes. Like faithfulness is my job, but outcomes is his. And so it's like, I'm not like more blessed because I like crushed it this morning in my quiet time. No, it's like whatever it is, like the reality is like God is in charge of the outcomes. And so if I find myself discouraged, because that's the thing for me, it's like, man, I get myself so worked up because I'm constantly thinking about other people's ministries or thinking about other people's giftings. And it's just like, they're not more faithful because more people are in the room. Like faithfulness is my job. Obedience and outcomes is up to God. So I want you to remember your life is a part of a much bigger story. And then I want you to remember Jesus. I want you to remember Jesus. Right? When the author is writing to the audience, it's literally, he says, because we're surrounded by this huge crowd of witnesses of the life of faith, strip off the weight, especially that slows us down. And he talks about running the race. And then it talks about Jesus. He says he's the pioneer. He's the champion of our faith. And I think about when I read that, I'm reminded of the words in Paul to the Philippians when we were going through the Philippians series, when it says, he who began the good work within you will see it until the day of completion. And I just want you to remember, like, there is a person that embodies the fourth act of the story of God that knows exactly what it's like to go through the things that you're going through today. Who knows what it's like to experience tension. Who knows what it's like to experience betrayal? Who knows what it's like to experience suffering? And one of the ways I want to just encourage you in this room today, if you're like, man, there's just something, like Jesus has never called you to something that he has never done first himself. And he won't call you to something that he doesn't know the start and the end of. He's the author, the perfecter, and the finisher of our faith. So I want you to remember Jesus. To remember those things. And so I think it's important because if we look to Jesus, right, we're going to move towards Jesus, right? I'm a runner. And so one of the things that I constantly had to get out of the bad habit of when I first started running was looking down constantly when I was running. Like I would just like, do my feet look okay? Like, is this how I plant, right? And then like there was this one time where I was looking down so much I actually ran into something. That's a different story because I don't have time to share that. And so thank God for that. But the same kind of thing is just true with life, right? Maverick is learning how to skateboard because we got him scooters and then we realized that's bad parenting. So we got him skateboards like good parents. And so we took him to the skate park, and one of the things that we're trying to teach Maverick right now is like, okay, hey, wherever your eyes are is where your board is going to go, right? I think that same thing is true with life. Like you are going to move in the direction of where your eye's attention is. And so the things that you're looking at really does matter. So if we're looking to Jesus, that's going to be good. But one of the things that I just would love to encourage all of us in is if we take our eyes off of Jesus, there is a temptation for all of us to place our faith not in the object of our faith, but in our faith itself. Does that make sense? When you're like, man, like if your eyes are off Jesus, it becomes like, it's basically like, oh, am I good enough? Or am I dynamic enough? Or do I have everything that I need? Or am I anointed enough? Is my MC doing great? Is it full enough? And like, that's just not the goal. Like the goal of life is to look at Jesus and encourage others to do the exact same thing. It's like the encouragement for us as we embody what does it look like to remember and run is not for us to just get in rooms like this and go, you got it, buddy. It's to go look at Jesus, to look at what he's done, to look at who he is, and to remind you that he has gone before us. Listen, your salvation and the salvation of those in our missional context is not your idea. It was his. And that's why it says that the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, because on the other side of that suffering was joy, knowing that one day you and your neighbors and your coworkers and the people that live on your block would come to know the truth and the beauty of goodness. And get this, it's often through you, through your presence in the missionary context, through your faithfulness in your neighborhood, to you showing up with school with integrity and in your locker rooms going, I'm going to be different than how it's going to be. I want you to remember that your life is a part of a much bigger story and to remember Jesus. The second thing I want you to do is to run. It's to run. It's remember and run, right? When the author writes to the audience, he says, and I want you to run the race with endurance, the race that God has set before you. Listen, my race is not your race. Like your MC's race is not someone else's MC's race. And I think that should be encouraging for so many of us, is because for some of us, we know what it's like to be in spaces for so long where it just feels like I have no more wind left in my sails. I just need some encouragement. I just need some people around me to declare good news. And listen, that's why I love that the text says to run with endurance. Because to run with endurance means to push, to experience pain, to experience difficulty, to experience tension, to experience discomfort. Like no one's ever like gone through something easy and was just like, I'm just glad I got the endurance from that. You're like, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? But listen, the Christian life is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And faithfulness or long obedience over a long period of time is what it looks like. I love that someone just explained this to me. Someone said that the Christian faith is basically just the long journey home. And so if we're going to remember and run, I think that there's a couple of things that I would love to encourage us with, just in light of this text, right? To remember and to run. And he says, if you're going to run, you've got to do a couple of things. You've got to lay aside the weight that slows you down and the sin that trips you up, and then to look at Jesus. And so I just want to encourage you, maybe for some of you, I'm just going to like say it, and if Kevin doesn't like it, he can edit this out in the video later. Like, that's the beauty of this, right? Or the camera's not on, because I get to say whatever I want because he's not here. But I told him I was going to say that ahead of time, so that's okay. One of the things that I just know when it comes to discouragement is oftentimes because of the weight that slows us down and the sin that trips us up. And if we're going to run our race with total endurance and total, like with everything that we have, we've got to know that there are some things in your life and in mine that slow you down from getting there. And one of the things that I chose this translation because if you read it in your translation, you might have something that says, like, lay aside. It's like you're not folding laundry. Okay? Like if a scorpion got down your pants, you would do everything you could to get that thing off you, right? Because you know that no matter how little it is, something is seriously dangerous is in there. So you're like, get it off me. Listen, that's the approach we have to take with sin. Like you just have to get to a place where you just like learn to hate it so much that you have to live into the light in such a way where you have to throw it off you. And I love that the author gives us a difference, right? It's like, hey, listen, not everything that's going to slow you down is going to be sinful. Sometimes it's just like morally neutral lesser loves, right? Anybody love good Tex-Mex? It's like one of those things like, man, like there's a spot in Florida that we used to go to all the time, and they like lay it out for you, and it's like, and I'm a sucker, right? So like steak fajitas is where it's at. That's the go-to order. But you know what they do? They bring out this bowl of chips, and you just tell yourself, I'm just going to have one. And you just have one, right? You have one little chip. And then next thing you have 4 baskets of chips. And you're like, what the heck, right? And then they bring out that like sizzling fajita. It's like, psst, it's like 4 blocks down the road. And you're stuffed. All right, and then here's the danger. Listen, you will miss out on the feast of life with Jesus because you've stuffed yourself with things that might not be bad. It's just different. And so listen, God is inviting us into this great feast of life with Jesus, life in community. And so I just want to challenge you. Is there something along the lines of that where it's like, man, this thing is actually prohibiting me from running the race that God's put before me? And whatever that is, I want to encourage you to spend some time with community and with Jesus about that. For some of you, it might be sin that you have to confess. That's the beauty of this room. That's the beauty of the people that are in this room. For some of you, it's just weight that slows you down. You go, man, I think that like this thing, it's not bad, but if I'm not careful, this thing will consume me. Maybe it's like chips and dip, and you're just like, well, that's a good one, but like maybe you're like me, it's something like that. I just want to encourage you in every single one of us to literally, if we're going to run the race, if we're going to serve on mission, formed by God together for the sake of others and run the race, we've got to address that there are some things in our life we've got to strip off. If some of that is sinful, for some of that, that's just weight. And I want to encourage you to do that work with God and with others around the table. And so here's how I would love for us to just close today. I'm a big believer in this idea of head, hands, heart. You might have heard of it. And so I got a couple of questions on the screen for you that I would love for you to just take some time to think through just by yourself. This isn't going to be like a turn to a few people around you and confess the sin that so trips you up, right? Like, there's different spaces for that. But I think just for right now, I would love to just take a few minutes and maybe for one of you, or for some of you, to just wrestle with these questions. Where have you felt discouraged? And what truth about God do you need to be reminded of, right? Because remember, we're not just trying to like just pat ourselves on the back, right? It's not, you got this. It's look at him again. Our hands, what's a weight or sin that you need to lay down? I think that's an important practice, right? That's not like youth group camp sermons, right? It's only cheesy if the person's cheesy. That's a real thing in the text that the author is inviting us into, to lay down the weight. And then heart, where can you fix your eyes more on Jesus this week? And before you take that moment, I would just love to, in a moment of transparency, go first. There was a great irony around this sermon prep for this week, because here I am in the space of encouraging others in the gospel and knowing where I wanted to go and remember and run, and I'm going to tell jokes about fajitas and it's going to be awesome or whatever. But what you don't know is this was a week where I experienced so much discouragement internally, I was ready to quit ministry. Where I was just ready to fold it up. And it's like, who am I to like navigate this tension of like, I'm supposed to encourage people. And then here I am just going like, yeah, but like my hamstring's torn. Like I'm tired. I'm wondering if I have what it takes to plant. And then I'm reminded, faithfulness is my job. Outcomes is his. Thinking through moments where I'm just on the phone with Kevin wondering like, man, do I really have what it takes to do this? And just experiencing a ton of discouragement to where all the sermon prep looked like this week is for just me to sit with the text myself and go, God, would you remind me of who you are and what you've done for me? Because listen, it is so much easier for me to get up here and to preach this message and then to pretend like it's not for me, but it's just as much for you. There's moments this week where I was so discouraged, I had to reach out to some people and just say, hey, here's where I'm at. And through prayer, people called me and chatted with me. The Spirit literally brought random people to my mind on my phone. And I was like, okay, like God, you're sending people. I'm encouraged. But I want you to know it's real. Like this message is not like, okay, like good luck. You guys figured it out. Great. I've already figured it out. Like, no, I'm letting you know. I get it. I really do. And I get what it's like to be like, do I have any more fight left? And I just come to the conclusion that I don't have to know the next step on the path. I just have to stay connected to the one who's carved it out before me. Is there an area in your life where it's like that? Is there an area where you need to remember Jesus? To remember that your life is a part of a much bigger story? Or is there an area where you need to run? The Spirit's been putting a people group on your heart, a moment where the Spirit's been putting a certain person into mind or a demographic or an MC, and it's just time to run. I want you to run with endurance. And so I just want to encourage you in light of that. As you wrestle with these few questions for the next few minutes, I want to just encourage you to take some time. Ask the Spirit, show me where I need endurance. And then I'll come back up, and then we'll take the table together.